And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think will be the next country to leave the EU?
Ah, right. If I had to pick the big country that I thought was the joker in the pack, it is Italy. Why? Why? The Italians, in the First World War, supported us. And then in the Second World War, they started off supporting the Germans, and then they split, and half fought with us and half fought with the Germans. For Italy, there is no emotional, historical attachment to this idea of joining together because of war, because they're not, as a nation, emotionally tied to either side of this very long-running dispute that went on for 75 years, across Rhineland, Europe. That's point number one. Point number two is that economically, the euro has been a disaster. There has been no growth in Italy, folks, for 20 years. No growth in Italy for 20 years. Youth unemployment in Italy is now touching 40%. This isn't working. So the economics aren't working. And thirdly, they are a Mediterranean people. And I think for them, arguments about being safe and sensible and secure have far less resonance than they would in the cooler northern climes of Scandinavia or Northern Europe. And I think if there's a shock coming, if there's a major shock coming from a big country, Italy is top of my list. Right now, folks, in the opinion polls in Italy, a man called Beppe Grillo, who is the best-known stand-up comedian in Italy, is currently in the lead in the opinion polls. It's quite tough to tell who the jokers are now, isn't it? There will be general elections in Italy will take place at the latest in February of next year, and I think you're going to see a very Eurosceptic parliament in Italy. I'm not saying they'll leave quickly, but I think inevitably Italy is moving towards leaving. The one country that should have left years ago is Greece. And I think for anybody that believes in democracy, I think the way that the little Greeks have been crushed, not just by the European Union, the IMF here in Washington have also played a shameful role, in my opinion. If you vote for a government, it's not up to international authorities to say they can't put in place their manifesto. And the Greek economy has now contracted by 28% since 2008. Even at the depths of the American Depression in the 1930s, the maximum fall of the economy from top to bottom was 16%. In Greece, it's fallen 28%. So I think, look out for the Mediterranean. I think there are major shocks to come. I will say this to you and to all of you. They all say in Europe now, oh, it's okay. It's all going to be fine. The populist wave of 2016 is over. Just look at France. Monsieur Macron has won in France, which proves that our European supranational project is back on track. What they don't look at is that in the first round of the French presidential elections, 47% of people voted for candidates who were basically secessionists, something that was unthought of. And look at the east of Europe. Look at Hungary. In fact, a very famous British commentator, political commentator called Andrew Marr, he said, if you look at the statements of the prime ministers of Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic, he said they make Nigel Farage sound like a Foreign Office diplomat. and these are countries that have lived under communism, that have lived under Nazism, that have lived under totalitarian regimes. And when that wall came down, and what a great line of Ronnie's that was, tear down this wall. I mean, it really was, wasn't it? It really, really was. But, they've had democracy since 1990, and they saw the European Union as being a wonderful opportunity of getting closer to the West, and indeed through NATO, of getting a bit closer to America as well. Big part of the thinking in countries like Poland. Don't underestimate that. And now you have the Hungarian Prime Minister saying, well, maybe this European Union is beginning to look and feel a bit like the old Soviet Union in terms of how it operates. So I think whether you look at the split, there is a cultural split from north to south caused by the euro. There is a cultural split from east to west in Europe caused by religion and attitudes to immigration and indeed Islam too. The European project is dying on its feet. It's only a question of how long it takes. And all I can say is, thank goodness we had the sense to get out before the train hits the buffers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.